This is the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast. Your hosts are Seth Jacobson and Patrick Heiler.
All right, you want to get started on this chapter?
Sure. Starting with not chapter 49, chapter 50.
Yep.
Starting with chapter 50, Meetings at the Eye, and our symbol is the Aventosaura leaf. I'll start with the first paragraph as usual.
Do you just assume the Aviendasaur leaf is because of the Green Man?
Yeah, I assume so.
Because there's no Aviendasaura tree.
Right, he actually says that.
Yeah.
Which is something I had forgotten. I just associated him with the tree for no reason. He's never anywhere near it. He does talk about it. But he says, I haven't sat underneath the tree in however many thousand years, 2,000 years.
But he was one of the Nim who worked with the Aiel and the Ogier to grow trees.
Right.
Back during the Age of Legends. And he was a magically created being.
Yeah.
Specifically for that purpose. To grow things.
Do you think the Aiel in the Age of Legends had the singing talent? Do any humans ever? We've talked about this a little bit before. I don't know if it was while we were recording or not.
I mean, we see them singing with the Ogier in Rand's flashback when he goes into the Terra Real in Ruidion.
Originally, I had just assumed that they're like lending something to the song. But then for a while I was thinking that they're just there to do work or whatever, they're servants.
No, I think they're definitely adding to the song. I mean, we see Rand singing.
And I think that's pretty clear that he's can sing at the end. I also noticed I guess toward the end of chapter 51, which we'll be recording tonight too, Rand does the ring the earth like a gong thing.
Mm-hmm.
And like runs his hand over the earth and does all this. That's a special talent.
Yeah.
Reading about a while back. The special earth manipulation stuff.
Okay.
Well, it's a talent.
Yeah.
Or maybe an affinity, but Rand's got it.
Right.
So does Egwene.
Well, just, I mean, the affinity for earth.
Yeah.
Channeling.
I guess affinity isn't the same as a talent, really, but...
Right. Yeah, I'd see those as different.
I'll start off with the first paragraph.
Sure.
Leading the bay, Rand followed the Green Man with the other Emmons fielders, all staring as if they could not decide whether to look at the Green Man or the forest. The Green Man was a legend, of course, with stories told about him, and the Tree of Life, in front of every fireplace in the two rivers, and not just for the children. But after the Blight, the trees and flowers would have been a wonder of normality, even if the rest of the world was not trapped in winter.
So they've just sort of stumbled into the eye. You know, everything's changed around them.
They're just suddenly there when they need it badly.
Right. And the Green Man's just like standing right in front of them. It's crazy.
Oh, hey, guys.
Yeah. How you doing? Welcome to the eye.
Just a 15-foot tree man here. No big deal. Or, yeah, around 15 feet.
That seems right.
Right? Is it?
Because we know Loyal's like 8-9 feet tall.
I think half again as tall as a man. I could look back here, but I think Rand describes the Green Man as like as much taller than the Ogier, as much taller than Loyal as Loyal is taller than him. So I'm just imagining like.
Well, we put Rand at like 7 feet.
Yeah.
Rough estimate.
Enormous.
Yeah.
So Loyal might be 10, 12 feet.
Yeah, I'm thinking, 10. That sounds right. And then...
I'm imagining the Green Man as
15.
Roughly half again.
That sounds right. Yeah. Probably not taller than 15 feet.
Be difficult to talk to look straight up.
Anyway, here Rand is thinking a little bit about, in the end of the last chapter, the Green Man called him Child of Dragon.
Yeah.
Which we know is the name for the Aiel.
He's kind of thinking about it as he's walking and notices that Perrin is kind of acting in the same way, who also maybe didn't appreciate being totally called out, but the Green Man's doesn't realize that it's a problem.
Oh, yeah, because he calls him a wolf brother. And
Yeah.
Perrin was definitely like not trying to let that out.
And even the Green Man even seemed surprised.
I did notice this, though. I think we talked about the 1,000 burning points of pain piercing his bones in the last chapter.
Yeah.
And here he says, the second he came within the Green Man's domain, he was sure it's him that winked them out. So, like, somehow, and we thought it was him embracing the source.
Right.
I have to wonder if the Green Man's grove isn't maybe somehow related to Steading.
That's what I thought.
But everyone's able to channel, so it doesn't have that like non-channeling ability that the Steading have. So anyway, it was interesting because in the last chapter we decided that those 1,000 burning points was Rand embracing the one power. And yet here, as soon as he enters the grove, they wink out.
Rand has that thought. And he also thinks it's him that winked them out, he thought. The Green Man and this place. Yeah, geez. When I read that, I initially thought like, oh, it's like some kind of moving Steading, but it's not a Steading.
It's not exactly a Steading.
No. It is a special place, but it's not really described how it works. Nobody really knows. I think even Moraine says nobody knows how this place was built or how any of this was done.
Right. We really get no clues. But, that makes me wonder if somehow it's related to a Steading, that somehow maybe the Green Man can invoke. And they talk a lot about the peace, which is very similar to the Steading. And, of course, the relationship between the Green Men and the Ogier is very tight. They call him Tree Brother.
Vendasora-esque, where
right.
Rand's saying, Egwene felt it, Nynaeve too, the soothing peace, the calm of beauty. He could tell. They were small, serene smiles.
That's a good catch, that's almost the exact same feeling he gets when he passes under Vendasora.
Yeah, I wonder if the Green Man just has that effect, like the same effect as in a Vendasora tree.
That could be it.
They wore small, serene smiles and brushed flowers with their fingers, pausing to smell and breathing deep. When the Green Man noticed, he said, flowers are meant to adorn. The plants are humans. It is much the same. None mind, so long as you don't take too many. I like that line.
Yeah, I actually highlighted that line too. It's very environmentally conscious. He wants to, it's okay to take advantage of the plants and the animals around you as long as you don't take too many.
He also, and when I say he, I mean the Green Man, he also kind of gives the plants personality. He implies that they would care if you took too many.
Yeah. Yeah, he
which may just be him and his relationship to plants.
Just that he understands. I mean, he is part plant. I mean, I guess he's entirely plant.
Even Moraine wears some flowers.
And I just like picturing all these, this is a very short moment of peace and happiness before what's about to happen.
Really short.
Oh.
I liked this part too. Even Moraine received a pale garland of Morningstar on her brow, woven so deftly that the flowers still seemed to be growing. Rand was not sure that they were not growing. They probably are.
Oh, yeah, I totally... I mean, the way the Green Man's able to, like, bend... he's like, I'm not sure if the thorns are bending out of the way. Of course the thorns are bending out of the way, right? Like...
That's a really lovely scene that I would love to see on film one day.
Oh, yeah.
And the Green Man, the next paragraph... just kind of describes how he tends the forest as he wanders through it while he's leading them to the eye.
And I like this quote. All things must grow where they are according to the pattern, he explained over his shoulder, as if apologizing, and face the turning of the wheel, but the Creator will not mind if I give just a little help. And I almost think of that as him later helping out Rand. Rand has to sort of grow into the situation he's put in, but the Creator won't mind if the Green Man helps him out a little bit.
A little bit.
I mean, he does take out one of the Forsaken.
Yeah. Balthamel, right?
Yeah.
They get to where the eye is. And I just have the rough description. It's an arched opening in the side of the hill. It was a simple stone arch, tall and white, and on the keystone was a circle halved by a sinuous line. One half rough, the other smooth. The ancient symbol of Aes Sedai. The opening itself was shadowed.
And that to me really is the symbol of the two genders working together.
Yeah, I liked that. I don't know that I had really taken note of this before, but that the flame of Tarvalon is smooth. Like I'm imagining like polished marble. And it says the dragon fang is rough, as if like representative of the feel of the powers.
That makes a lot of sense.
I'm imagining just like a broken piece of granite looking
very
like
rough.
pretty but dark and rough cut.
Sort of emblematic of how each power feels to the channelers and how it works.
That's the feeling I was getting.
You have Sedin, which is this very smooth flowing that can suck you under if you try and resist. But if you ride it, it's the right amount of power.
Yeah. I realized recently, I think it was when we were recording the last episode, it's Sidene, but I always say Sidin, and I have been saying it this whole time, all these years.
Yeah.
Sticking with it.
Sure.
It's Sidin to me.
Wait, Sidar and Sidene.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's been annoying anybody, but I know that I'm wrong, and I'm not sure that I care.
Pronunciations. I know what you're saying.
I just thought I'd throw it out there that
Sure.
I do know that I'm wrong.
We do our best. We do our best.
Nobody said anything yet, so I don't think anyone cares about that.
I like this interaction between Matt and the Green Man and Rand.
Yeah.
Right before they go in, Nynaeve is like, is that what we're here for?
That's the next thing I have too.
And Matt's like, I'd really like to see the Tree of Life, Matt said, not taking his eyes off the halved circle above them. We can wait that long, can't we? The Green Man gave Rand an odd look and then shook his head. Avian Desora is not here. I have not rested beneath its ungentle branches in 2,000 years. You were right, 2,000. I said 2,500.
Yeah, I highlighted that specifically because I was wondering, what does he mean by ungentle branches?
I have no idea.
I thought it was a strange way to describe Avendosora.
Considering it creates peace, I always read that as gentle branches. I didn't read that as ungentle.
Yeah.
Huh.
Well, there's another one of those things. We don't know what that means.
I have no idea what that means. Other than the fact that Matt ends up hanging from the tree, that's not exactly gentle.
Yeah. I mean, that thought occurred to me, but I didn't see that as like.
And I don't see that as a parallel. I mean, the only I'm trying to compare it to like real legends where they sit beneath the tree of wisdom for a long period of time. But
Yeah. I mean, Odin has to get hung from it or nailed to it, hung from it to be reborn.
I'm assuming hung from it because that's what Matt does.
Yeah.
Oh, but so the reason I wanted to talk about this quote is that the Green Man gives Rand this odd look.
Yeah.
And he's like, well,
you should know.
You should know. You're Aiel. The Aiel have it. That's what that odd look is saying, is like, wait, didn't you explain to him the Tree of Life's not here? It's with the Aiel in Ruidion.
Like, do you want to field this question?
Yeah. Everyone thinks Rand is freaking Aiel.
Well, he is.
Yeah, well, true.
He just doesn't know it yet.
No. Well, he definitely suspects.
The Tree of Life is not why we came, Moraine said firmly. She gestured to the arch. And there is. I thought this was a little interesting. I will not go in with you, the Green Man said. The butterflies around him swirled as if they shared the same agitation. I was set to guard it long, long ago, but it makes me uneasy to come too close. And if you don't mind, I think I'll read this, probably a whole paragraph, because it gives us a good description of
Go for it.
The eye of the world. I feel myself being unmade. My end is linked with it somehow. I remember the making of it. Some of the making. Some. His hazelnut eyes stared, lost in memory, and he fingered his scar. It was the first days of the breaking of the world, when the joy of victory over the Dark One turned bitter with the knowledge that all might yet be shattered by the weight of the shadow. 100 of them made it, men and women together. The greatest Aes Sedai works were always done so, joining Sidene and Sidar as the true sources joined. They died, all, to make it pure, while the world was torn around them. Knowing they would die, they charged me to guard it against the need to come. It was not what I was made for, but all was breaking apart, and they were alone, and I was all they had. It was not what I was made for, but I have kept the faith. He looked down at Moraine, nodding to himself. I have kept the faith, until it was needed, and now it ends. You have kept the faith better than most of us who gave you the charge, the Aes Sedai said. Perhaps it will not come as badly as you fear. The scarred, leafy head shook slowly from side to side. I know an ending when it comes, Aes Sedai. I will find another place to make things grow. Nut-brown eyes swept sadly over the green forest. Another place, perhaps. When you come out, I will see you again, if there is time. With that, he strode away, trailing butterflies, becoming one with the forest more completely than Landscloak ever could. What did he mean? Mat demanded. If there's time. Come, Moraine said, and she stepped through the arch. The hair stirred uneasily on his arms. I interpreted that as just fear. It's not anything to do with the power.
Well, you read a lot. Yeah, so this is one of the reasons, specifically, you've got men and women joining together to make this pool of purified Saidin. One of the things that I thought that it may have been is a clue to Rand in how to cleanse the source. That in order to cleanse enough, that it was possible to cleanse some of Saidin.
And a lot of it, really.
And a lot of it, and put it in this pool.
Yeah.
And that required men and women working together. And that may have been one of the clues he needed in order to actually cleanse the source.
Right. To be powerful enough to do such a thing, you would need women helping you.
Right. Well, and, men and women working together is super important for a couple of reasons. One, the powers work in slightly different ways.
Right.
And two, in order to get enough people together, you can make big circles and create way more power. Just raw power by adding men into the circles.
Yeah. What is the limit again? Is it 13 women or is it 12 women and then you add a man, you can add another 12 women?
No, it's 13 women. That's why that's the traditional amount to still a man.
Gotcha.
And then once you get an additional man,
you can add,
I think, another. I don't know.
Oh, no. It steadily descends.
Yeah,
because there's a cap. I forget what the number is.
So I think it's you add a man and you can add,
but there's
12 more women, and then another man is
a full circle as we know it now is 13, but a complete circle at the end of the series is I don't remember, 72 or
something like that.
Yeah,
because Demandred has a full circle behind him.
Yeah,
that's how he dominates the battlefield. Is he has
the full circle and the cup.
The cup, yeah. Oh, the chalice.
Right.
I mean, let's be honest. The Holy Grail.
Yeah.
If you read the short story where he goes and gets it, it's basically a quest for the Holy Grail. And he fights one of the worms that has turned into an adult.
Can I find that online, or do I have to buy it?
I think you have to buy it.
Do you have it? I might buy it. It's been a while since I read that years ago. I have a description of the Eye of the World. I'll read this. And the corridor opened into a vast dome space. The rough, living rock of its ceiling dotted with clumps of glowing crystals. I thought it was interesting. Some of this was interesting because it looks like Age of Legends technology, with the crystals containing Saidin or something.
Clumps of glowing crystals? I imagine that's more like just a physical...
Maybe it's just pretty.
Yeah.
Below it, a pool took up the entire cavern, except the walkway around it, perhaps 5 paces wide. In the oval shape of an eye, the pool was lined about its rim with a low, flat edging of crystals that glowed with a duller, yet fiercer light than those above. Its surface was as smooth as glass, and as clear as the wine-spring water. Rand felt as if his eyes could penetrate it forever, but he could not see any bottom to it. The Eye of the World, Moraine said softly beside him. As he looked around in wonder, he realized that the long years since the making, 3,000 of them, had worked their way while no one came. Not all the crystals in the dome glowed with the same intensity. Some were stronger, some were weaker.
I imagine that looks a lot... We've been to the rivers up here in Oregon, those crystal clear, cold water when it's just flowing and you can see the bottom.
Yeah.
And you're not sure if it's a foot deep or 10 feet deep.
Uh-huh.
That's sort of what I think of when I think of the Eye of the World, is just this almost distortion. It sort of exists outside of reality, too.
Yeah, Moraine describes this, and this is the next thing that I have. I think I can't remember if it's Rand or Matt saying, what is it? Like, what is this?
Mm-hmm.
And she says, it might be called the essence of Sidin. The Aes Sedai words echoed around the dome. The power to mend the seal on the Dark One's prison, or to break it open completely. But she says, the essence of the male half of the true source, the pure essence of the power wielded by men before the time of madness. So,
Well, and right before that, Matt kicks a rock into it, and it sort of like fades away and disappears.
yeah.
And I was wondering if you had any idea like what was happening there with the rock.
No.
Yeah.
But to my knowledge, this is the only time we ever see anything like this, like a collection of Sidin
A collection of like physical.
held in a pool.
Right.
It's kind of a strange thing. Yeah, so God knows what happens if you were to make a pool of Sidin and then put something into it.
Right. What is. Yeah. That's.
It's like half of the power of creation.
Right. Yeah. I don't know. Yeah. No, it's one of those
Something weird
weird.
happens.
Something weird happens. I don't have anything else to say. Now, if this was Brandon Sanderson, I'd say that was a shard pool and it got transported to the cognitive realm. But that's a whole other
I like it.
series. So, I mean, if you really want to bring the Wheel of Time into a Sanderson universe, you could totally call this a shard pool.
I always wondered, Loyal said uneasily, when I read about it. I always wondered what it was. Why? Why did they do it and how? No one living knows, Moraine says. That's what we were talking about before. But she describes it a bit, and I assume that like these 100 Aes Sedai got together and did this, and they must have used themselves as filters. Because Moraine says, and so does the Green Man, that they all died, every single one, to make this pool.
Yeah, I imagine they took the taint onto themselves, and that's what killed them.
Yeah.
Either that, or they just burned themselves out with too much power. But for every single one of them to die, and not like some of them to get burned out, or I imagine that they did something pretty severe. That they used themselves as filters. I think that's what you just said. Yeah, but that's the only way I can imagine. Because when Rand eventually cleanses the source, he uses basically Shadar Logoth as the filter.
Yeah, I was thinking about this as I was reading earlier. How does Rand manage to siphon the taint from Sidin? Do you remember what he does or how?
Yes. Do we want to really go into that? I guess we can. All right.
Is it a super long?
I mean, so the short explanation is he has Nynaeve form a funnel, a very funny shaped funnel from Sidar.
Uh-huh.
And then he starts channeling Sidin through it, and it sort of separates the two, and the taint is attracted to Shadar Logoth, and so eventually he creates a sort of like if you take a chain and you pull it out of a beaker, and eventually there's enough weight on the chain to start pulling more of the chain out.
Gotcha.
And so he's able to pull out, he's channeling huge amounts of Sidin.
And like a siphon.
Yeah, and along with that, yeah, exactly.
Once you get it moving, it'll just go.
It'll just go. And so he doesn't need to channel all of Sidin. He just needs to channel enough to create that siphon. And once that siphon starts going, the taint basically pulls itself off of the surface of Sidin. Timber. Pulls itself off the surface of Sidin and into Shadar, the pit, the darkness that is Shadar Logoth that's attracting it.
And the whole thing just implodes.
And the whole thing just cancels each other out. Yeah. So I really want to get into what you think the need is, right? So the whole point of the Eye of the World is that it was created.
Yeah. This is kind of funny. I just kind of sort of want to share at the Hive where Elizabeth, the tattoo artist that's doing my sleeve, works. She's like the youngest tattoo artist there, and she's like 35 or mid-30s. So they're like a bunch of older, experienced artists who are like have their stuff together like married people. And this was the first time this happened, but I went in the other day and it was like evening. So like usually they don't do a lot of appointments. Oftentimes it's like me and Elizabeth and there's like one other artist there just drawing in the corner or something. And I guess one of the artists whose table is right next to Elizabeth's brought his daughter. And this is just you and Timber, the interaction happening right now is reminding me. He's like tattooing this guy, and she's like 7 or something.
Mm-hmm.
Keeps running up and be like, "Daddy, can I have another lollipop?" And he's like, "No, you already had 2." And like 4 minutes later, she's like, "Daddy, can I?" He's like, "No."
That's very much Timber and his toy. He's a good boy.
Like every 5 minutes, but it was more amusing than anything else.
Oh, he wants constant attention. As he scratches at the door and whines.
Exactly. That's what God. Made me think.
All right, so back to need. What is the need? I mean, I've speculated about a few things, that it was a clue to help him figure out with the cleansing of the source that you needed males and females.
The need for the creation of the Eye of the World?
Yeah. Why? You know, Moraine says it was created for the greatest need the world will ever see.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things that happen because the Eye of the World is created. And I was just curious if you had an idea of, you know, is there one in particular that was the greatest need? Is it the whole situation? Was it there to help him face Baalzamon? Was it there to kill Algamor? Was it there Algamar? Sorry.
Agenor. I've been doing that in my head a lot. Agenor.
Yeah. Or was it there to help him destroy the invading army of Trollocs? You know, there's a lot of things that happen because he has this power.
It's hard to say. I could speculate, for instance, that, you know, with these however many Aes Sedai were left after the War of Power, there could have been a foretelling, like this needs to be done, or it also could have been random, like let's create this, because it's not just the Eye of the World, the Green Man, and this awesome place. Like this awesome place has its own functions that the Green Man does not control, or the Eye of the World, that it gravitates towards those who need it, and it is guarded by the Green Man. This is like a really special place that also had to have been created magically.
Right.
So I guess in a way it's a bit like some of the other artifacts that we don't really understand, like the horn. Although the horn's much older than the eye.
Right. At least with the eye we know who created it.
Right. And we don't really know anything about the horn other than that it's older than the Age of Legends.
I imagine the horn to be one of those objects in a time-traveling movie that no one ever creates. It's just like they transport it back in time, and then you get to the end of the time loop, and it gets transported back again, and it just keeps cycling around and around and around again, and it never actually gets made in the first place.
Yeah, maybe. Something like that. Or
that the horn just always has existed and has always been part of the pattern.
I like it. I mean, we know that it ends up being needed.
The horn?
No, the eye.
The eye, yeah. Well, what would have happened if the eye didn't exist? I mean, certainly Baalzamon probably would have been able to defeat Rand.
I think so.
The Trollocs would have invaded.
Yeah.
Agenor would still be alive.
Yeah, and a new Trolloc War would have started.
Yeah. And it took 100 years to get out from the old one.
And the world is not ready for a new Trolloc War.
Especially not, with the Dark One about to break out, the last thing the world needs is a Trolloc War. It would have totally undercut their ability to survive what's coming.
Very likely.
So here's where Moraine talks about how it took a combination of men and women to create the eye.
Mm-hmm.
That women working alone could not have filled even a spoonful. That it was important to have the men and the women together.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting when she was talking about it that she mentions that when she's talking about even if all the women in the world work together, and she says even the ones that live behind the Aiel Waste and the ones that probably still live on the other side of the Aerith Ocean, even if all of those women. And so it was just, I just thought it was interesting. I don't think it means anything, but just that she knows that there are people there and that there must be channelers amongst them.
That's a good point, because so often people are like, well, that Shara stuff came out of nowhere. You know, when Demandred shows up with that whole Shara army. But, honestly, like...
I guess, sort of. But,
even though culturally the group is... Randland is isolated from the rest of the world is out there. And they talk about it relatively frequently.
Yeah.
I mean, everything with Jane Farstrider, where he goes over...
We just hear the least about the Sharans.
Right.
And when you consider, like, all the different ethnic groups, and there's so many that... To hear very little from one isn't really very surprising.
No. I think what is surprising, though, is that they end up playing such a major role in the last battle, and we have very little information about them before that.
Yeah.
Here, Moraine still, Rand's freaking out because she's saying, yeah, that's a pool, pierce it in. And he's like, I can channel.
Yeah.
Why did you bring me here again? And she's like, because you're Ta'Veren. And again, that's just Moraine... Yes, he's Ta'Veren, and that is important, but that's not the whole truth. That's not even close to the whole truth.
She just knows that she's putting the pieces of the puzzle together, and she just hopes it works. I don't think Moraine really she doesn't know what's going to happen. She just knows that if she gets the Dragon Reborn and puts him where he needs to be, then shit'll work.
And she knows that the Dark One is going to strike there, because of the prophecies, or at least the messages. Right. So she's sort of saying, we need to be here to stop that. So they immediately turn around and leave, which frankly seems a little weird.
Yeah, it does.
I
didn't really think about it while I was reading it, but...
They head down to the pool. They're like, yep, there it is. Well, let's head back up again.
Yeah, because you were Ta'Veren, the Aes Sedai's face was unreadable. Her eyes shimmered and seemed to pull at him, because the Dark One's power will strike here, and because it must be confronted and stopped, or the shadow will cover the world. There is no need greater than that. Let us go out into the sunlight again, while there is yet time. Without waiting to see if they would follow, she started back up the corridor with Lan, who stepped perhaps a bit more quickly than usual for him.
So yeah, why does Moraine immediately say, let's go back up and check out the sunshine? Any ideas? I've got nothing.
Maybe she doesn't know if the world is going to end or not. I mean, she doesn't. I don't know how confident she is. She's pretty confident.
She's usually pretty confident.
I don't know why she does that. But then I have this next part. I do not like this, Moraine, Nynaeve said angrily when the sun shone on them again. I believe the danger is as great as you say, or I would not be here. But this is, I have found you at last. Rand jerked as if a rope tightened around his neck. The words, the voice, for a moment he believed it was Baal-Zaman, but the two men who walked out of the trees, faces hidden by their cowls, did not wear cloaks the color of dried blood. He goes on to give a little description. Who are you? Lan's stance was cautious, his hand on his sword hilt. How did you come here? If you are seeking the Green Man, he guided us. The hand pointed at Mat, was old and shriveled, to scarcely human, lacking a fingernail, and with knuckles gnarled like knots in a piece of rope. Mat took a step back, eyes widening. An old thing, an old friend, an old enemy, but he is not the one we seek. The green-cloaked man finished. The other man stood as if he would never speak.
So basically, the only reason the Forsaken are able to find the Green Man in the Eye of the World is because they follow Mat and the Shadar Logoth dagger.
The dagger.
The dagger.
Yeah.
The dagger is that little piece of corruption that leads them right to him.
Which is all, going back to what we were talking about right before this, like, why does Moraine turn around? Why does all this happen? This is I think your pretty typical Ta'Veren fate twisting, where why does Mat end up with the dagger? Like, why does Moraine turn around at that moment and say, like, let's walk outside, and then they walk right into Aginor and Belthamel? Why does all this happen? And a lot of storylines are kind of tied together in this way. I always think, when I'm thinking of this, the way when we see even wilder Ta'veren related things happen later in the series, like when during the Seafolk negotiation. Wait, does that happen with the in one of the Shan-Chan negotiations too?
Seafolk.
Where Rand is.
Well, that's
with the Seafolk.
There is a scene where he confronts Tuon, and everyone is like, "How did you talk back to him?" And she's like, "Oh, I barely did."
Yeah,
like, and that's because that's when he's pretty much at the height of his Ta'veren-ness.
Yeah,
but even before that, he's in the middle of a negotiation with the Seafolk, and they sort of give in to his demands. But then, because he's feels like he's in the box, being trapped in the cabin, he gets up and leaves, and then the Seafolk manipulate the Aes Sedai. He leaves to finish the job because Aes Sedai are useless.
Well, not totally true, but
the Tower Aes Sedai, a little useless.
Yeah, knowing what we know now after having read the series, like the only ones who are actually out to do any good are like there's only a few of them. Like, and how many talented individuals could there be amongst these like couple of these like dozens of women? How many like truly talented negotiators are
right.
You're left with a really small pool of people who are actually working on your side at all.
Well, you take the 1,000, a third of them are dark friends.
Right.
Another third probably want nothing to do with you. It's just, yeah.
Yeah. Or are very young and inexperienced.
Right.
And you're left with a bare handful of like really useful people.
Right. And a bunch of them are out in the world doing stuff. Well, not as many as there should be, but.
Yeah. I wonder sometimes, it's got to be a Black Aja thing, but like, why wouldn't there be like a White Tower recruitment station in like every major,
I'm convinced a lot of the stupid White Tower stuff that Egwene changes is entirely due to the Black Aja influence.
It's got to be, because it would just make so much sense to like, build a free school for girls only. The White Tower has so much money, there's no reason you couldn't at least put one in every major city.
Have hospitals available with
you wouldn't
Yellow
even
Aja.
Have to make it publicly known that it's White Tower funded. It would just be like this organization that educates children, and you could just pick the channelers out and be like, these are talented individuals who will take to Tar Valon for a even finer education.
Right. And they wait for girls to come to them. They don't seek them out. I mean, it's just
that's like the worst strategy.
Terrible rules. Terrible. And I have to assume that's all culturally influenced by the Black Aja that wants easily manipulated girls.
Yeah, I think so.
And a small, weak White Tower.
I think that's right.
There was one other thing that he said, which is he is not the one we seek, which obviously means that he knows which of the boys they're looking for. He knows we're not looking for Matt. He knows they're not looking for Perrin. He can definitely tell that they're looking for Rand. I guess what I can do here is I want to talk about the two Forsaken, because we basically get an introduction to the two of these guys. You've got Agenor and Bethalmel, and they were both very close to the edge of the grinding of the wheel, which means they experienced the time passing in a way the other Forsaken didn't. Ishamael was capable of being active and being out in the world, whereas these two were still trapped but still experiencing the time as it passed. So you've got Agenor, who was really more of I want to call him a scientist. He was strong but not particularly skilled. I think we were talking about how some Forsaken, the strength and the power isn't just how strong you are, but also what you can do with it. And Agenor is one of those guys who may have a fair amount of strength, but very little skill. He's a scientist. He's not
as far as
warrior.
Being a fighter.
Right. And we see that later when he is resurrected and becomes one of the Ashaman.
I forget which one of the Forsaken it is. I think it's one of the Forsaken at some point says or speculates that the only reason Agenor was elevated to Forsaken was because he invented Shadowspawn.
Pretty fucking terrifying.
Oh yeah, I mean it's a great tool. It's super important, but not because he's a great manipulator of events or because he's one of these like Demandred, like a terrifying in combat or a great general or anything like that. But he's the mad scientist of the bunch.
Right. And then you have Bartholomew, who's really the sadistic one.
Yeah, I think that's a good assessment.
I would say, I mean, he's basically wearing a bondage mask.
Yeah, the thing is creepy.
And he's totally into perverse pleasures of the flesh. Because he ends up being Helena, who's all
Right.
about, like, using her body to get what she wants. There's very much a sensual nature to Bartholomew, a perverse sensual nature.
I think that's a good assessment. I'd want to read more about Helena now. We were talking about this recently, like with the massages and headaches sequence way later, and what that's about, or what his intent was, or her, whatever you call it at that point.
I'd say her at that point.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're talking about
bodied male soul,
yeah,
it's a they. It's a they. They're a they.
At some point, I really do think Helena, Arengar becomes Helena, is Bartholomew. Osengar is Agenor, who is the Shiva. Okay, so that's. I just wanted to get into them a little bit since we are introduced to two of the Forsaken here.
Yeah, who neither of which lasts very long.
This is literally the only chapter with
So
them.
there we are, and then they're killed.
Then
Pretty
they're
much.
dead. And then they're resurrected a couple of books later. I like this quote. We're bound, Agenor smiled. His yellow teeth had the look of fangs. Some of us are bound no longer. The seals weaken Aes Sedai. Like Ishamael, we walk the world again, and soon the rest of us will come. So I think this is the most direct evidence that right now only 3 of them are out.
I noticed that. We were talking about this in our last couple of sessions, and I speculated that they may be all out, but he implies that they're definitely not.
Assuming we trust him.
Or definitely not all.
Just we see them talk about being too close to the surface and how they both experience time in a way that basically aged their bodies.
Yeah. He describes that how they were trapped at the edge of the bore where time could still touch them. So Agenor looks like he's falling apart. And I think it's Rand who's looking at him, and because this is mostly from Rand's perspective. That's looking at Balthamel and sees the mask and like that he's totally covered and wonders like what does he look like under that he thinks he should cover it. Like if Agenor looks like this, what does Balthamel look like?
And there's a point where the Green Man is killing him, and for a second he sees the flesh, and he's like, "Wait, is that flesh?"
Interesting.
And there's that question of like,
he does say that.
I think it's flesh, and so you wonder what was actually going on under that mask. What,
or it could just be a
state was he in?
Yeah, he's alive somehow. I'm just imagining like if you've ever seen a animal that died like out in the dry field somewhere and you run across it years later and it's just like a little bit of hair and like dry broken leather and
over a
bleached
skeleton
bones.
Yeah,
And that's it.
I imagine he's a lot like that.
Yeah.
That almost a walking skeleton.
Ugh. Skeletor, more or less.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Skeletor with like dead skin stretched over it.
Yeah, still animated somehow, but
Right.
I guess his body doesn't matter. I don't know how that would work. He's kept alive by the true power or something.
Yeah, well, they've got that connection, the black thread that we'll talk about,
Yeah.
keeping them alive. And he also says that soon they're going to get new flesh anyway. So both of them, they're not. one of the interesting things is even though they both die, they're both going to get new flesh anyway.
Right. So killing a Forsaken is only delaying them.
Exactly. And not even that badly in this case, because frankly, their bodies were about to probably fall apart and die anyway.
Yeah. We do see Agenor when he is taking part of the Eye of the World that he manages to kind of, I was going to say reanimate, but it's not that he was inanimate. He manages to like subtract years off his...
Oh, that's a good point. He uses that raw power to make himself healthy again.
Yeah.
And young again.
We're sharing a look right now. I don't know how that works.
Yeah, that's the only time we really see... Well, I take that back. We do see other characters get younger with the use of the power. It just happens much slower.
Yeah, and, it's another thing that we can't explain, but we can sort of explain where Forsaken know about things that we don't ever know about.
That's true. We don't find out about every piece of knowledge from the Age of Legends.
Maybe there's some way to accelerate that or decelerate the aging process.
Or somehow use the pool of purified Sedene
to actually
accelerate that process in a way that you couldn't just by embracing the source.
Yeah.
Or it's some combination of true power, one power.
I had that thought too, because we know that you can't heal yourself with the one power, but maybe with the true power you can.
Right. So here he says, the world will be ours. This is very much like monologuing like an evil guy. The world will be ours once more. Seriously? He actually says that.
It never was, buddy.
Yeah, no. You will have no Lewis Theron Kinslayer this time. No Lord of the Morning to save you. They get He Who Comes with Dawn. Basically the same thing. We know the one we seek now, and there is no need for the rest of you. So they've figured out who Rand is, and they're ready to kill the rest.
Right.
And this is where we get into just basically combat.
Yeah, there's a big action scene. Lan tries to draw a sword, which is dumb. Gets thrown away. I mean, it's at least a distraction.
He needs a Foxhead medallion to help him out first.
Yeah. Why doesn't Lan ever get one of those?
He does.
Well, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Sarcasm, right.
Nynaeve does something similar.
Right.
Was this the scene that our friend from Discord, Kelsey?
Yes. Oh, so let me pull that up. So way back in chapter 5, Kelsey sent us a bunch of questions for this chapter. Long before we ever thought we were going to have her on the show.
We'll try to answer what we can right now, but I didn't find an answer for that particular question where...
So I'll read her question. She says, when facing Agenor and Bathalomal, Lan is conflicted between protecting Nynaeve or Moraine as they are facing the Forsaken, and they're too far apart from each other for him to protect both. The text is purposely ambiguous and says he lunged towards one of the Forsaken. Which one do you think he was trying to take out, and why? So
I'll read this.
Yeah.
Lan's sword sprang from its scabbard, too fast for Rand's eye to follow. Yet the warder hesitated, eyes flickering to Moraine, to Nynaeve. The two women stood well apart. To put himself between either of them and the Forsaken would have put him further from the other. Only for a heartbeat the hesitation lasted, but as the warder's feet moved, Agenor raised his hand. It was a scornful gesture, a flipping of his gnarled fingers as if to shoo away a fly. The warder flew backwards through the air as though a huge fist had caught him. With a dull thud, Lan struck the stone arch, hanging there for an instant, before dropping in a flaccid heap, his sword lying near his outstretched hand. So it doesn't sound like Lan even moves. He draws his sword and he's about to do something, and then...
His feet moves. As his feet moved. So
It has the warder's feet moved, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's but it doesn't say, he picked them up. He may not have been moving in any particular direction yet. There's no way for anyone to know which direction he moved in.
If I had to speculate, I would say he's going for Agenor, who's the one who's been talking. I don't really have anything to support that. He's just made a scene for himself. Balthamel standing there quietly this entire time.
Yeah, so reading the question, it sounds like there's one Forsaken with each woman, and he has a choice to attack one or the other. But reading the paragraph, it makes me sound like the women are on either side of him, and the Forsaken's in the middle, and he's going to jump towards the Forsaken to attack him directly. He's not going to worry about protecting one woman or the other. He's going to go towards the source. However, that totally skips over the point of the question.
Which is who does he want to protect the most, essentially?
Yeah,
Or basically.
in that absolutely classical, who would you save, right? One of them's going to die. You have to pick which one to save. Which button do you push? Like, which button do you think Lan would push in this situation? The woman he's dedicated his life to, or the woman he's falling in love with?
I mean, the first thought that came to my mind was that Lan might view it as necessary for the survival of the world that Moraine stays alive. Nynaeve, not so much. I would think that Lan would pick Moraine.
But we know that Nynaeve is part of it, and without her, Rand may fail. And so it's
That's
possible
true.
that saving her could be more important even than saving Moraine.
I mean, in the long run, it is.
Yeah. Because we lose Moraine relatively quickly.
And I mean, cleansing sight in.
Right,
is
well, I mean,
far more important than anything Moraine does, really.
all the things Nynaeve is able to come up with and does. And, I mean, basically raising an army for Tarwin's Gap. And, I mean, there's so many things that she does.
And the girls kind of take over for Moraine later when they're hunting Forsaken and general plotting, Bowl of the Winds, all that.
Yeah, I think there's a good argument to be made for saving Moraine first for a couple of reasons. One, she knows how to use the power now,
Right.
and Nynaeve doesn't. And we see that even though
This is
it
what I
doesn't
was
affect
thinking.
the Forsaken very much, it is at least something to delay them. And then Enigma pointed out that if Moraine dies, Lan's going to be pretty useless.
Yeah.
So whereas if something happened to Nynaeve, he could probably continue to fight on.
And Moraine may be able to save Nynaeve.
Right. Right.
Or with this distraction that Lan's creating, Moraine may be able to do something that's actually helpful.
Exactly.
Because I don't think Lan is so ignorant that he doesn't know he may die right now.
Right. So in practical terms, I think saving Moraine is the right thing to do.
I that's what I thought.
However, the obvious thing is that he hesitates.
Yeah.
And that Lan hesitates. Like, when does Lan ever hesitate? All right, and this is where Moraine has been super worried about his split loyalties, and this is one place where it may actually be a very legitimate worry, because Lan did not act as quickly or as decisively as he really needed to, because he was torn between the two women. And perhaps if he'd acted quicker, he may have been able to stop Agenor simply by being ridiculously fast in the way that Lan often is.
Yeah. That's possible.
So pretty much everyone does a pretty weak attack at this point. I mean, this is, again, if we're going back to the D&D analog, these are like level 1 characters going after a big boss.
Yeah.
And they all sort of just get like bounced off, and Agenor's like, yes, kneel at my feet. Excellent. Agenor is pulling out all of the big bad, the evil overlord list.
What do you...
I don't know. So this is the thing online. Have you ever read the evil overlord? It's like a list of rules that like what to do if you're an evil overlord. And, it's like...
No, I've never seen this.
Rule number 1, no monologuing. Rule number 2, all your minions have to have clear face visors so the good guys can't hide. Rule number 3, it's like basically a list of all the things like evil guys do, make all the mistakes they make in movies and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, here are the rules for not being a dumbass evil overlord.
Give your whole plan away.
Right, exactly, exactly. And so Agenor is like falling into all the evil overlord traps of just monologuing and telling them exactly what he's going to do, and
Oh, yeah.
dismissing the good guys as insignificant.
I mean, he didn't have the foresight yet. This was written in the 90s.
I know. Agenor didn't have the internet.
Copyright 1990?
Yeah, it's 90.
Yeah.
And so out of nowhere strides the Green Man to save the day.
Yeah, so here we have a pretty badass scene where Agenor once again dismisses the good guys, or our best guy here probably. You do not belong here. Agenor spared him a brief, contemptuous glance. Begone, your time is ended. All your kind but you have long since turned to dust. Live what life is left to you, and be glad you are beneath our notice. This is my place, the Green Man said, and you shall hurt no living thing here. One leather-clad hand lifted, and the Green Man roared as smoke rose from the vines that wove him.
Oh, we should mention that Agenor has a hold of Nynaeve.
Yeah, he lets her go here.
Yeah, he's basically, she charged at him, and he's like, not entirely sure what he did to her, like an electric shock or something like that, but basically hurt her pretty bad.
Yeah, she was screaming.
Yeah.
We don't know. I don't think we ever hear about what exactly that was. I imagine just some kind of torture.
I'm nodding.
Yeah. Balthamel tries to burn the Green Man, and the Green Man gives him a big ol' hug.
Here's a hug
As he's
of death.
A giant burning tree man hugs this Forsaken, and one gloved hand flung wide, and a tiny creeper burst through the black leather. A fungus, such as rings in trees in the deep shadows of the forest, ringed his arm, sprang from nowhere to full grown, swelling to cover the length of it. And the rest I just kind of highlighted the types of plants.
The plants that spring out of Bethalmal are things that eat rotting dead, like fungus, and something that eats
Yeah, I noticed
rotting
that.
dead wood, not something green and fresh.
And what I wondered here is if, I would bet that we have some of the spores. Well, some of these would need seeds to sprout, but I would bet we have some of these spores in our skin right now.
Oh, sure, they're microscopic.
But the Green Man's special power is that if he just gets near it, he can make it grow, and he just accelerates that so much that whatever is inside Balthamel blooms so fast that Balthamel just is digested by mushrooms, fungus, and stinkweed. I
also thought it sort of represented the fact that Bethalmal is dead wood. He's dead flesh.
Oh yeah,
he's not living. If the Green Man had done that to a younger Forsaken, they would have been burst out with like a tree or something like that. Not
I
fungus.
used to think that, and now I think that this would probably be the only way the Green Man could actually kill someone. Like, he's not turning them into plants as much as he is forcing or making the spores and seeds that are on him or in him grow so fast that he dies.
I'm gonna disagree with you there.
Yeah?
Yeah. I think he's actually turning him into the plants.
I have no basis for my argument.
No,
so
I don't either. That's
Okay.
what's wonderful, is we can both there's nowhere to go with this other than to be like, no, I think you're wrong.
Okay.
Which is
debate about this online.
Yeah.
I want to see what happens.
Yeah, tell us. It's so rare that we come to a point where we're both like, yeah, I don't think so.
Well, yeah, pure speculation on both their parts.
Right. Other than you were saying, some of these things require seeds, and he doesn't have like those seeds on him.
That's true. The nettles
Mm-hmm.
and stinkweed don't come from spores.
I can buy that the fungus is like microscopic, but those other plants I see as like a physical representation of his character.
Yeah, nettles are just like, people just don't like them because they're spiky and they make you burn if you walk through them, if you rub your skin on them. They're pretty.
They're very
pretty flowers.
Yeah, aren't they purple?
Yeah, like a pinkish light purple color.
Mm-hmm. No, I think they're gorgeous. And then stinkweed.
Yeah, it's just a junky plant.
Yeah.
That everybody hates.
Right.
And it grows in swampy places. Wet places.
So they basically kill each other.
Yeah. The Green Man turns Balthamel into all these nice plants, but he's on fire and falls over.
Right. Here's that quote where he says, "Was it flesh seen in that brief moment of verdant rage?" So I'll read more of that quote. "The Green Man threw the Forsaken down. Bethalamal twisted and jerked as all the things that grew in the dark places, all the things with spores, all the things that loved the dank, swelled and grew, tore cloth and leather and flesh. Was it flesh, seen in that brief moment of verdant rage? To tattered shreds, and covered him until only a mound remained, indistinguishable from many in the shaded depths of the green forest. And the mound moved no more than they."
And with his last dying breath, the Green Man grabs onto an acorn, and it turns into a giant tree.
Yeah. I imagine he dumps... I don't imagine it's his consciousness, but his life force somehow is in that tree.
Drains into... It's an oak tree.
Right. And Loyal, I think, later ensures that the tree will not be touched by the blight.
Doesn't he sing to it for a long time?
He does. And he says, at least the blight will not touch Tree Brother. So somehow he identifies the tree as the Green Man.
Yeah. Oh, man, I'm going to tear up a little.
Yeah.
I have this here... And an oak that could have stood 500 years covered the spot where the Green Man had been, making the tomb of a legend. Nynaeve lay on the gnarled roots, grown curved to her shape, to make a bed for her to rest upon. The wind sighed through the oak's branches. It seemed to murmur farewell. Then Moraine makes her move here with the pit to hell, which is, I think, the only time we see this move. I don't know what that is or what she's doing.
I imagine it's a combination. She uses the earth uses the earth power to drop the ground down beneath him and just fills it and use flame to fill it. She's just trying to create a trap beneath him for him to fall into.
He somehow walks over it, although he seems slowed by it.
Yeah, I assume he's just supporting himself with a bridge of Saidar. And, he's protecting himself from the fire and the flames.
Yeah. And Moraine tells them to run.
She's just not powerful enough to create enough force to get through his shields.
Can I just have the last paragraph? Unless you have anything else you want to get into.
Oh, I like Egwene and her little scene that she, steps up and she's after Moraine's run, she's just trying to channel at him. She's trying to throw everything she's got at him. She does not give up.
That's very much like her.
Yeah. Oh, Forsaken coming from me, and I have no idea how to use this. Whatever, I'm going for it. All out, balls to the wall. Here we go. And so Rand gets her to run.
Rand hesitated only a moment, long enough to glance over his shoulder and to see that Egwene was hidden in the trees. The flames still surrounded Agenor, patches of his cloak smoldering, but he walked as if he had all the time in the world, and the fire's rim was near. Rand turned and ran. Behind him, he heard Moraine begin to scream.
And that's the end of the chapter.
Oh man, only 4 chapters left in the book, and these two are like a long conversation with the Green Man and Rand filled with Saidin. It was pretty action-packed.
So what are we drinking tonight?
Rainier, and
I mean, does Rainier really count as beer?
Old Rasputin Russian Imperial Stout. You've gotten this before. I remember this one.
This is a dangerous beer. It's an easy drinking 9%er. So that's one that they only sell in a 4-pack for a reason.
Yeah. I think that's actually a legal thing.
Is it? I don't know.
I'm
I've seen
not sure.
some high percentage beers sold in 6-packs.
Yeah. I just know when they're served in a bar, like depending on the amount of alcohol by volume, you have to serve it in varying sizes. So for instance, like you can't pour someone a pint of whiskey.
Well, no,
That's the
not.
extreme end.
But you can get a pint of like 10% beer though.
I think so.
I mean,
I'm not sure what the cutoff is. I don't serve any of those beers at my bar. Like, I don't have anything like that. But I know that, like, at least some of the higher percentage, like barley wines and stuff, like once you get to like 11, 12%, you have to serve, I forget what it is, by like 8 ounces or 10 ounces. I don't remember. I don't serve wine or high percentage beer, just liquor and regular beer.
Liquor is pretty standard. Because that's always 40%, right? 80 proof?
For doubles, I should know this, but I don't.
Well, we're recording on a Friday rather than a Thursday because you went out and got some more ink.
Yeah, I got a new tattoo. I accidentally double booked myself. Totally forgot to check what the date was.
Whatever. But you're working on the edible plants sleeve tattoo, although I guess they're not all technically edible.
Well, parts.
Yeah.
I tried to make them as roughly all edible as possible, but like it's only certain parts of certain plants.
But you got maple leaves this time.
Yeah. So the sleeve's almost done because that's like my bicep area, and then the back is going to be a walnut branch.
Okay. But you've also got some details. You were going to add like bugs and...
Oh yeah, I'm going to do more stuff.
So there's quite a bit of work left to do on that one. And you also showed me a tattoo that I didn't know you had gotten.
Yeah, I have a guy that I have been working with for a long time, went through a tattoo apprenticeship, and he has to do like, I forget what it is, like a certain amount of hours, certain amount of tattoos or whatever to pass the tattoo artist bar, if you will, where you like have to do a certain amount of work. So he was just like going around to all his friends like, hey, is there anything you'd want? So I was like, I would get a fox chasing ravens on my leg somewhere. And he drew it up. It looks pretty good. I'll have to post it on Instagram or something.
We should include it in the show notes for the episode.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Yeah, I think I did that with your last tattoo, and that was good. So people...
I have some pictures on my phone. I don't know if everyone wants to see my, like, half-shaved leg. Maybe I can find, like, a drawing of it. Or...
No, yeah. Send me a picture. I'll include it with the show notes for this episode.
Sure.
But yeah, that's just a classic, the fox going after a couple of ravens. I think that's...
Yeah, he just made it kind of jumping off my ankle.
Yeah. Well, I was researching the artwork for the podcast, so I'm in progress of working on that. And we settled on a fox and a raven in the Tree of Life.
Yeah.
And apparently there's an Aesop fable that involves a fox and a raven. And it's all about being aware of flattery. But so when I see a lot of fox and raven images, I think even the one we're using on our Facebook banner may actually be like an illustration of the Aesop's fable.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I didn't even realize. I just found a good image and used it.
Right. So I only figured that out later, but it's an interesting little tale.
Oh, you told me this story once, but I can't remember it. I remembered it when you told me.
Oh, it's like the raven has something delicious in its mouth, and the fox comes up and flatters him until the raven like caws in delight, but that causes him to drop whatever delicious morsel he has, and the fox eats it. So it's like, be careful of flattery. The people are probably after the things that you have. Is basically the moral of the tale.
Interesting.
I don't know, probably unrelated, but the fox and the ravens. I was wondering why that image was so common.
Oh, I went and saw Thor a couple days ago.
Ragnarok?
Yeah.
Good?
Me and Jules wandered in there. There's a theater near my apartment that shows movie. It's like just the one theater, like only really small place. They're like $5. But
do they serve beer and pizza too?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. I love that about Portland
we do
movie theaters.
We go like at least a couple times a month to see whatever. Yeah, it was good. It was fun. It was kind of like a lot of comedy and a lot of like the characters being funny.
That's what I heard.
Which is cool. And then, a bunch of action and Thor in space, essentially.
Oh, yeah.
Making jokes.
I feel like Guardians of the Galaxy and Deadpool have sort of shown that a little more of a comedic take on superhero movies can be beneficial.
Yeah. Yeah. And the Hulk talks a lot, which is weird. I don't know how canon that is. But I don't really know the Marvel universe? Universe.
Marvel.
I don't know Marvel or DC, or I was never really a comic book guy.
They didn't take long enough to read.
Yeah. I don't know. I just never got into it. I never even owned any comic books when I was a kid. Does anyone know about the Hulk talking? Is that I don't think that's canon, man.
Enigma was saying that Hulk talks in a lot of his different forms.
Oh yeah?
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't really know the full.
My DC stuff is generally limited to the Superman, Batman cartoons of the early 90s.
Yeah, I watched some of the shows when I was a kid, and I remember on Cartoon Network at night. I don't think it was even called Adult Swim yet, but they would show like all the really old cartoons, like
Sure.
Like the Wonder Twins and.
Oh.
What was the one called where they have like a big round table of all the superheroes? They're about to make a movie out of it.
Super Friends?
Super Friends? Is that it?
Enigma's typing. I'm going to let him correct us. Justice League.
Oh, Justice League. This guy knows his shit.
We shouldn't talk about comics. It's not an area that we know anything about.
We know nothing.
Other than, just the pop culture stuff.
Did I tell you I ran into a subreddit a while back that's just called Things Jon Snow Knows?
I'm guessing there's a single post and it's nothing.
I don't even remember. I just saw the title and it laughed, and it's pretty much the end of my exploration of that.
Have I told you that I was trying to convince Jessica to go as, that we should go as Jon Snow and the redhead wildling?
That would work.
It wouldn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not as pretty as Jon Snow, but
you know nothing, Seth.
I really don't. I guess I've been tweeting with the Legendarium podcast.
Oh yeah.
Tentatively, we're talking about doing a collaborative episode, but
Yeah, that'll be cool.
There's a lot that goes into that.
If we do, I think it'll just be a bonus episode, probably.
Yeah, it would just be nice to see. Those guys they've been doing a great fantasy-based podcast for a long time.
Yeah, and they have a
I'd love
pretty big following. Who knows? Maybe now that they've gotten through the series, because for those of you who don't know, Legendarium was like a first-time read-through podcast.
Right.
It was more based on that.
I think they did like 2 episodes per book.
So maybe anyone that was reading with them should come listen to our podcast now.
That's what I'm saying. That's why we should get together with them, and I bet we'll be able to convince a lot of people who just read The Wheel of Time and who listen to podcasts that, hey, here's another one they should probably listen to.
Yeah.
Now, I'm guessing there's quite a bit of overlap already.
I would imagine so. I mean, I've listened to their podcast, so.
Mm-hmm. Anyone who's talking about The Wheel of Time, I'm all into it.
And we always say, what to do when you're done reading The Wheel of Time is you read it again.
Right. You get to the last page and you restart. That's pretty much the only, because that first reread is super important. And, if we can grab the Legendarium listeners who read through it with them for the first time and then are starting over.
Yeah.
It would be perfect. And they could read through with us having known all the basic facts, and we could fill them in with the details.
Heck yeah.
And they're good guys. I like their take. They have more of a literary take on the books. They have this like first, second, third level thing they talk about, and
I've only listened to a couple episodes. I really should listen to more of it. How many episodes do they even do?
Well, like I
know
said,
I'm subscribed, but
2 per book.
Oh, so 30.
Give or take, yeah.
Or so.
And they've obviously done a bunch of other unrelated episodes in between. So like they'll do like a couple of Wheel of Time episodes and then switch over to like they did a review of Stranger Things 2 and Thor. That was their last episode. They bounce around a little bit. They like to, the Wheel of Time is so long, they sort of peppered other reviews of other things and other books in between.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Like a quarter of everything we release is us not talking about the Wheel of Time.
At least.
Yeah.
I mean, I do try and move all that stuff to after the music, so if people don't want to listen to us bullshit, they don't have to. Well, let's see. Before we get started, I've got one or two bookkeeping things, as usual. Patreons. Short list this week, but that's because we recorded just a few days ago.
New folks.
Well, Zenvius upped his donation, so he gets another mention. Thank you, Zenvius.
Thank you, Zenvius.
Sahil Karhanis donated $5, and that was great. There was just a little bit of static on some of the
I don't
episodes.
think I even noticed anything.
Yeah, I mean, I think it just has to do with it's not worth getting into. Something goes wrong and you're never sure what.
Yeah. Oh no, I understand. It's annoying when I listen to other podcasts and they're not
The audio's not
to
good.
snuff or whatever.
Yeah. I feel like I put a lot of effort into making sure the audio isn't terrible. And like we've re-recorded a few episodes where we didn't think the audio was good enough.
Yeah. No, it's pretty clean.
Yeah. I think it's the minimum. It doesn't have to be perfect, but you need it to be some minimum quality before it's even worth listening.
I really think the only stuff out there that sounds better are like the highly produced like PRX, like WNYC, the big NPR podcasts, BBC stuff, but they have like, millions of dollars to pour into awesome recording equipment and real studios.
I think they would laugh at you if you told them they had millions of dollars.
Well, in aggregate. and I know like, yeah, I listen, I'm really into like all of the Radiotopia podcasts, which is an umbrella that I think is like roughly associated with like some people who work on NPR stuff work on Radiotopia stuff, but all their stuff sounds really good, but I think they're almost entirely donation based.
Well, NPR is pretty much entirely donation based.
One of my very favorites out of that group, the Radiotopia podcast, is a podcast called Strangers. This woman, the host, basically does a podcast on like not understanding other people. And so she has like a series where she like interviews Trump supporters, and she has like a series on relationships, and it's all really good stuff. But she often jokes that she will like finish the last bit of her recording like in her bedroom closet. Just like a pretty good, space for sound with the clothes hanging and stuff. I can see it. But that one sounds really good. But I know that's a big podcast. Like a lot of people listen to that.
And I feel like with a decent microphone, you can get away with some of that and get some really good sound quality.
Probably.
No, I'm jealous. But at the same time, like I'm not that jealous. I feel like we have managed to create a really good sound without breaking the bank or really spending
hardly any money.
We're both pretty frugal dudes. We survive on egg crates on the walls and
working class incomes.
Yeah. So while I'm doing patrons, Alexander pledged and John Leonard pledged.
Alexander and John, we appreciate you deeply.
And I think I got everybody else.
Wow, this number must be getting close to like 50 now.
Of patrons?
Yeah.
Oh, we've got like
is it past
60.
60? I haven't even looked in. Gotcha. Nice.
And we've had 2 leave, so 60 total.
You guys can say hi to Timber.
Yep,
Timber's
squeaking at you.
There's a dog bed underneath the desk that we work on now. And Timber literally just lays there while we talk for a couple hours every week.
He mostly likes it, but occasionally he gets fed up that we're not giving him attention. And then he does that.
That's his favorite toy, the loudest one.
Thank you for listening to the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast. Rate us in the Apple Podcast app or support us on Patreon. Is that good enough?